defeat, such is his nature, that he rarely pauses to consider the other, the light, the known world. It is not in the night that this story is born, but in the searing light of day, and it is here that man comes face to face with his impending downfall, dreams of daylight. It seems perverted, doesn't it? It seems wrong to us, leap and yet dream of waking. It is the mind's oldest and cruelest trick, for even in his rest, man cannot cease to live. He cannot escape the world which holds him, which tolerates him, which cradles him like an insolent child. He is forced to endure his cruel reality, whether he wants to or not. We have often speculated on the potential of the human mind, on the strength it possesses, on the ingenuity which it is capable of. We wonder at its versatility, the ease with which it adapts to new challenges and new situations, and often we claim that it is the mind which sets humanity above all else. But I warn you, your mind is not your own. It is of another realm, filled with secret, inaccessible wisdom. It is its own keeper, and it is separate from you. Though the brain exists on this plane, the mind, the soul, as we name it, resides somewhere else entirely. It is what we describe as the spirit of humanity, the unseen force that has baffled us for eons. You may seem in control, but it uses you, it controls you, your mind and your identity. To separate entities, the mind goes where the body cannot. You are but a vessel, a means of transport. You move the mind from place to place. Give it root in something less ethereal, more tangible. It uses you, guides you, and it makes you its slave. The brain named itself. In sleep the mind travels, for it is in sleep that it is not bound by the tedious task of controlling its container. It may sever its ties to the material world and float about the cosmos. It can retain all of its focus, redirect itself towards showing, towards telling, towards warning. For that is what the mind truly is. That is why I share this. That is why my mind guides me to write this. Save your identity, save yourself. Dreams are reality. Dreams are a warning. Awaken from your ignorance. See your waking world for what it truly is. Your end is near, and you know it, you fools. You have known it for centuries. Listen, your mind speaks to you. My dreams, a temple, a place to pay tribute, a place to pray and learn. This is where I am drawn. I know not where it is, the location matters little. It comes to me through different times, different eras. One dream, it is made of stone. Another, it is nothing more than a mud hut. But it is not the appearance that matters. One thing, always remains consistent as I walk the hall of that shrine, an altar, alone, in the midst of an open space, the center of the temple, the center of worship. Upon it is light, ageless and unchanging. It echoes outward from a single point, hovering above the platform, cradled by some unseen hand. This is your mind. This is where your soul resides. The light whispers oh me, it whispers to you. It is a voice which, for ages, has tried to guide us toward salvation, and, if you listen closely, you can understand what it says. You have seen it and heard it before, though you may not remember. Through history, it has given humanity gentle nudges toward reality, and near always we have ignored them. Wisdom is what it shares. Great things, powerful things, but awful things too. For knowledge is powerful in the sense that in its truest form, it fills us with fear. When we heed the words of the light and respect them, they can direct us and save us. But too often we ignore this wisdom, this fear, and remain blissfully ignorant. We are content in our foolishness, for it absolves us of problems. Over history, men have given the light a name. They have tried to understand it, to comprehend that which knows them better than they themselves do. I have heard the light speak these names to me, telling me how it has been known across the age as God, Allah, Quetzalcoatl, Amaterasu, the great and knowing. It has gone by all of these. But our true God is the mind which, when permitted, guides us with ease through the currents of time. We have never truly grasped the message. Behind this force, man has attempted to organize what he learns, or what he thinks he learns, from this entity. Thus is born religion, a fork, which in theory promotes the greater good of mankind, but in all actuality leads it astray. When we organize, we take no time to heed our own identity. We are part of something larger, something formless and mindless. So focused are we on discovering the truth of the mind that we take no time to observe its guidance. Through my dreams I have allowed the light to find me, to guide me. I listen, and from an unknown celestial plane it speaks to me. Yes, I have spoken with God. I have spoken with the mind, with knowledge incarnated. Though its wisdom saddens me, it fills me with acceptance. Oh, the world continues on, but its days are numbered. I have found the solution to our problems, the way to escape this awful flesh, to know, to truly know the earth's end draws nearer by. The second you cannot hear it, the fine hum of demise which you, in your hurried actions and trivial pursuits, can never be privy to. But it is coming, and quickly escape back to the light. Escape, O your mind, and hear what it tells you. All men had their own story, their own history. I have none. I no longer have need of my past, of my identity. I have surrendered myself to the light. I have rejoined the Creator. I walk the halls of the temple, searching, learning. Dreams are the truest living I have ever experienced. The world is whole. Inside the temple I am whole. Waking has become an aching journey, a tedious trek to some destination that cannot be known. Perhaps there is no destination in waking, but in dreams there is. The light, I must join with it to return to my origin. I am so very cold when I awaken. My limbs are empty of the warmth that the light offers. But in my mind everything is as it should be. I know myself, though I am slave to the mind, the light. I know myself, my identity is whole. Steadily, very steadily, I have drifted away. I have slowly departed from the waking world. I sleep for longer and longer, but no, I awaken for longer and longer, for dreams are where my reality resides. I have no need for the trivialities of this world, no need for food, no need for drink. They are nothing but sustenance for my thick limbs. My living flesh runs cooler by the day. I lay still, but I am hardly aware. What worries should I have when I am one with the Almighty? I can sleep now, for as long as I please, to rest my body and thrill my mind. If only you knew, if only you could understand the holy bliss that fills my veins. It is beyond living, a higher form of existence. I am happy, I am happy. Join me, and save yourself. You could be safe, preserved in your dreams. The light is beckoning us back to it. The sun is nearly upon humanity. I'm almost gone from your reality now. Do know. Send for help. Do not despair. For so happy am I that my heart races and my eyelids flutter. The heat of the sun beats down onto your planet. It tears your world asunder. It grows hotter by the day. Why, who should have heeded me? You should have listened. I can hear the screams, and I will be the only survivor of this calamity. Life is extinguished around me. My mind has entered the light, and I will not survive in my flesh. No, my knowledge shall join the Almighty for eternity. I shall reach the human conception of heaven. Nirvana, peace. Everything is beginning to slow, and I am back, homing part of the great known, not the darkness that you should fear, but the light which you should welcome. What is this? A small tremor of my body. Is it? It is fear, though I am confident of myself and of my journey. I still fear. That is the nature of man, the burden of my identity. But that shouldn't matter any more. I am the last of my foolish kind. I open my as for a final time, and I glimpse it, a window in the temple, and outside of it. It is the sun. Come now, light, fill me. Withdraw me from this cold existence. I can see the earth around me be, reek and burn, a world overturned in moments. You fools, a heat is searing through me, charring me. My veins are on fire. My existence is burning. Is it the sun? Or is it the light? Perhaps both. I am whole. I am at peace. It is time to sleep forever. Yes, it is time for me to die. Sweet, blissful death, say your final goodbyes. For in an hour you shall have regretted ignoring me. In an hour you will all be no more. This is what you fools call divine wrath, and it is sweeping through your kind. I must be traveling on. The light, it calls to me. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub, for in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. Story 2, Rap Rat, the terror begins. Ever heard F Nightmare? Like a lot of other games in the 90s, it came with a VHS which you timed with your play. The character on the video would give you instructions on what to do while you played the game. In real time, being a scaredy cat, I refused to play it when my mom bought it for us. My brother was disappointed about not being able to play Nightmare, but my mom had a solution. She brought out Rap Rat. It was a cheap, dingy little thing catered to kids my age. You went around the board, collected cheese, and the first player to reach the end would win. It seemed simple enough, and since it reminded us of Mousetrap, which we didn't have, there were no objections. We popped the movie into the VHS and set up the board. The first part of the video was just a simple explanation of THE rules as well as instructions on how the game worked. Then Rap Rat came onto the TV. He was not what any of us had been expecting. My smaller brother, who was only 3 at the time, I immediately left the room crying. The rat did not even resemble a rat. The ears were far too big. It had a mouth lined with the teeth, and the inside of the mouth looked almost swollen. The most striking part about the thing, though, was the eyes. They were large, glassy, and fish-like. I asked, then bothered, then begged my mom to turn it off. Rap Rat suddenly shouted loudly, screaming and wailing, saying, "Wait your turn," in a demonic, low-pitched voice that was not at all like his normal obnoxious, nasal voice. In the background, We could hear the narrator saying he's Rap Rat, and he asked the boss over and over again in an overly serious tone. The video was indescribable. Images crossed the screen in quick succession, overcut with Rap Rat's expressionless eyes. The images were some of the things I was afraid of at the time. A person looking over a balcony, a hornet slowly stinging someone's eye, an extreme close-up of a tarantula, a pit full of writhing cobras, and a blooded syringe filled with green fluid. We immediately turned the video off, and I ran out of the room screaming, slamming my door. It took my mom 20 minutes to convince me that the video was gone, that I would never, ever see it again. I had nightmares all week about Rap Rat. That wasn't the last time I saw Rap Rat. While my girlfriend and I were preparing to move in together, I was cleaning out the closet of my room and found Rap Rat again with the same VHS and the same board game inside. It was almost perfectly intact, save for a thick layer of cobwebs and de-used bunnies on top of it. This was strange. Didn't my mother get rid of it? And what was the game doing in my room? I let out a bit of a gasp when I found it, and my girlfriend came into the room asking what was the matter. Breathing harshly, I said, "Rap Rat." She laughed a bit, asking if it was a joke. I shook my head, explaining that it wasn't. She didn't believe me. Nobody did, and I decided that the only way to prove it to her was to show her the video. I borrowed my neighbor's VHS and played the video for her. However, the images had changed. I saw a clown, its nose bursting and spraying blood onto the screen. I saw a woman alone in a dark room. I saw a man being forced to pick up white-hot metal and hold it in his outstretched hand, turning his hand to a leathery mess. The scratching I heard as a child continued, ticking up louder and louder. Then Rap Rat showed up and began twisting and convulsing, its arms thrusting this way and that. The costume wasn't a costume anymore. The felt was real fur. Its face wasn't plastic, but instead a bristle of thorns with teeth. The eyes turned inwards and suddenly popped out again. Rap Rat's huge fish eyes were inside out, staring right at me, watching my every move, my every expression. It grinned widely and gestured at my girlfriend, and with a single, outstretched, inhuman hand I could hear the faintest scratching at my front door. The TV went blank and showed static. The scratching got louder. It wasn't scratching anymore, but thumping. The thumping of tiny feet on wood. My girlfriend embraced me in fear, and my senses kicked in before anything else could happen. I stopped the video, ejected it, and unplugged the VHS. The scratching stopped. When I looked out the living room window, nothing was there. The police showed up soon after, warning us that a neighbor had seen a figure outside of our door and had called in concern. My girlfriend and I simply couldn't explain what had happened and had to tell the police officer that it was us. I was furious that a children's game was terrifying me. I went to pick up the tape, but the VHS burned my hand. It felt like I had touched a Bunsen burner on the highest setting. We had to get the oven mitts from the kitchen in order to take it out, and even then it was scorching hot. I brought it outside, too, set it down on the sidewalk, and crushed it with my winter boots. My girlfriend and I had nightmares every night. We would both wake up in the middle of the night and describe eerily similar images that we saw in our sleep. the scratching would always be there at night, when lights were off and the room was pitch black save for the moonlight coming in through the window. Now, though, the scratching would happen every time I went near the front door, and every time we said Rap-Rat's name. It sounded as if something very small was dragging something across the ground outside of the door, pacing. Waiting, I would simply wait, with the covers pulled up to my neck, until I succumbed to exhaustion. At this point, I was determined to sue the company for damages. The first thing I did was call my mother and ask where she got Rap-Rat. She had no idea. I found a merchant who sold versions of Rap-Rat and asked how I could get in touch with the company. He sent me this email. I don't know about the game, but I know it was created by the same people who created Nightmare. The company is called A Couple of Cowboys. Try them. I did a bit more research and discovered that the company became defunct in 1994, only 2 years after the company created Rap-Rat. I discovered why they did soon after. How Rap-Rat came to be in 1992, the year of the game's development. A couple of cowboys had commissioned a manufacturing company in Haiti to create the doll portrayed in the game. The company who created the puppet ran a sweatshop where they forced women and children to produce the various components of the puppet, including the felt and plastic of the doll. One day, a young Haitian girl got her arm caught in the industrial sewing machine. The spring loader, unable to handle the weight on the machine, came loose and struck the child's neck, killing her instantly. A few days after the funeral, the mother of the child came to the factory demanding to see the owner, who denied that he had anything to do with it. In a fit of rage, the mother said that the blood from the innocent would seep into every crevice of the doll, every component with which it was created, and all who touched it would die. She claimed to have summoned a fear demon and screamed at the top of her lungs, "Apparat will curse you." The owner simply laughed and told his corporate bosses about Apparat. They spread the joke from person to person, and the game was renamed Rap-Rat, a loose anagram of Apparat. Each recitation of the name Apparat brought with it a greater and greater curse. Only 2 years after Rap-Rat was created, the company was shut down and the owners hired by Mattel. There were stories as of the workers begging for days off, skipping work for weeks and weeks, finding the puppet in strange places. Sooner were the stories of suicides, grim, violent suicides in which the workers would stab their hands and burn themselves to death, writing "I am fear" on the nearest surface in blood. Nobody knows where the Rap-Rat doll went after the original creators disappeared. Some say that the last things the victims saw before going insane were large, sunken, fish-like eyes. Words of warning. 1. Never, ever say Apparat out loud. Saying a demon's name out loud is an invitation to them, a calling. If you have already done this, it cannot be undone. 2. Do not try to speak or contact Apparat. 3. Avoid being awake between 3:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. when Rap-Rat is the most likely to try to scare you. The audio. The VHS is back. I thought I stomped on it, smashed it to Kingdom Come, but it's back. I found it in my sock drawer yesterday. This time I was read. Why, a whole bunch of people have been contacting me, trying to get the tape or some sort of video from the board game. My answer to you is that it's just too dangerous. If I did that, it could very well drive you insane, scare you to death. The video and the game and Rap Rat itself has some sort of strange power. Rap Rat follows me everywhere I go. I see little shadows in the corner or hear sounds coming down the hallway when I'm the only one home. If Rap Rat is there, it will let you know, but it will never let you see it until it's too late. Of course, a lot of people have been watching the normal video from the normal board game. That's the thing, Rap Rat can be normal. It will trick you into thinking it's just a puppet, and then stalk you day and night. Story 3, in which a door is locked. It is the summer of your 17th year, and the parents have left you and your brother alone for just shy of 3 weeks in July. Your brother is 2 years your senior, has a job, a driver's license, a long-term girlfriend, goes to college on the other side of the state during the year. You to get along well, you're glad to have the time together that you do. Your parents, they are not your parents. Your mother is your mother, and your father is your stepfather. You have another inverted pair, stepmother and father, who live in a much larger house with 3 cats, a dog, and many Yankee candles. Your parents, who are not your parents, have taken a trip to Miami. They left on your birthday, which did not bother you all that much, but you thought it seemed lick. A metaphor. Still, your mother left you with a cheesecake, enough cash to sustain the 2 of you, and a well-stocked kitchen and vegetable garden. They also left you with a locked door. THIS was something your brother and you found very quickly on return from your other parents' house. It was the door to the master bedroom where your mother and stepfather slept. The door hadn't had a lock before, yet there it was, a shiny new brass doorknob with a keyhole, strange for a house's interior. You both laugh incredulously. You began extrapolating as to why they felt it necessary to purchase, install, and lock an entirely new door handle to keep you out. Maybe they've kept all of their alcohol in the room. But no, the usually bottles of wine and old bottles of sloe gin are there. There's even beer in the fridge. You decide to go outside into the vegetable garden, wading through zucchini plants to look in through the window. There is nothing of note. You can see the outlines of the bed, the dress, the door, all in place, but the dark room in the Bringson through glare-obscuring windows betrays very little in the way of details. You return inside, a tad uneasy. That night is the first night you spend alone. Of course, your brother is there across the hall. Of course, your phone is on, your computer and Kindle functional, your cats, your neighbors visible through your bedroom window. You are never alone. You hear no sounds that night, no terror, but the creeping dread of late-night extrapolation, baiting yourself to believe in demons and shadows and in extra-dimensional horrors. But you know that they are not really there, and that you are safe in your small house, huddled up to 3 others just like it. Sing across a quiet street. It's double, each house with its own families, and each member occasionally lying awake, quiet in their safe little houses. Later, your aunt and cousin come over. You eat cheesecake, and talk, exchanging stories and worrying superficially about each other. The door is brought up. Alcohol, drugs, condoms, briefcases full of money, stolen masterpieces, and diamonds are all offered as explanations, or dead bodies, you say, but add that we'd smell them after a while. Each night you sleep alone, and so very quiet. No sounds but distant dogs and perhaps the cats on your creaky floors, but these are interspersed with such great swaths of silence, a silence not of absence but of anticipation, as if, perhaps, it is daring something to break it. The western wall of your room right near your head is shared with that locked, empty room, and each night you dare to disprove its emptiness. Your days are unremarkable, but busy. You keep up with your friends. Your aunt, you and your brother share the experience of grocery shopping for yourselves. You tend the garden. You wake up with dreams in your eyes. Perhaps they are fully formed as you awake, but, to so quickly into vague ideas, they are, to say the least, unsettling. Feelings of dread, of guilt, the idea that you cannot escape, the thought of 1,000 tiny bugs probing your spine, the feeling of someone standing over you. You take things to help you sleep. Your brother, and you tell everyone about the door. It's becoming a story. Texts from your mother Reeve, all that she had no idea that there was a lock on the door, and you wonder if she is angry with your stepdad for it. She has given you half-joking permission to pick the lock, you and 3 separate friends. Try your best to open it. Cards, hairpins, paper clips, pocket knives all failed to unlock the door. You don't really care. You don't need what is behind it so much, though the iron and the toilet paper and your social security cards are there. It remains simply an itching nag at the back of your head when you pass by. One night you wake up, vague dreams of threatening figures dissolve, and almost instantly, though you cannot remember what jerked you awake. You wait, paralyzed in the dark, with the thought of a sharp sound in your house, hovering over you, tempting another sound to follow. No sound comes, but you notice you are lying face up. There is a pressure on your chest and on your wrists and ankles as if someone were laying on top of you. It is hard. All breath. With great effort you pry your eyes open and inhale sharply, at first seeing only false, nose-gray light like a head rush or the afterimage of a camera flash. It slides out of your view as the pressure slides from your body, and you are left with only the intangible darkness of your ceiling as your eyes adjust. You are terrified, though you are sure nothing happened. But you hope it never happens again, and it does every night that week, and you are always terrified. That night your neighbors, the ones across from your window, have a party. They are loud. Music and shouts drift over the fence. Just as you get up from your computer to head to sleep, you see one of them standing against your fence, facing into your room. The light is to their back, so they and the fence become a singular mass of shadow, features indistinguishable, but unmistakably looking at you. You sleep on the couch fitfully and close the blinds in the morning. Never opening them. You mention this to your brother, who agrees that sometimes the neighbors are creeps. There comes a night when you cannot sleep. It is the sort of insomnia born from restlessness, turning back and forth in bed and thinking too much, almost sinking into unconsciousness only to be pulled back by something you can't name. You feel as if someone were standing above you, on your left, from the wall shared with your parents' room. You feel something almost like a draft, but barely there. When you face to the left, steady on your face, like breathing, but open your yes, and receive only the near brightness of adjusting to darkness. You give up, walk to the bathroom adjacent to your parents' room to wash your face, and maybe take something to help you sleep. As you turn on the light, you look into the mirror and see an edge of bright gray nose like an afterimage silhouetting the right side of you. You feel the air behind the back of your head vulnerable. You blink, trying to clear the image from your eyes, though it remains stubbornly as the other fireworks of sleep disperse. You feel yourself preparing to be terrified, but unsure, you remain still, then move very suddenly to the left. The afterimage remains in its place for a split second, then realigns back to your face. You brace yourself, take steady breaths, and turn around. You are greeted with a wall of bright gray nose, which quivers as if surprised and, instead of fading, darts out of your view and around the corner of the bathroom into the hall. You hear a door closing. You do not sleep, but stay up with the lights on. The next day is hazy, and you cannot properly remember why you did not sleep. As you water the garden that evening, wading in the zucchini plants, you see something through your parents' window, a mass of shadow, the kind unnoticeable unless pointed out, but once seen very, very corporeal and dark. You look away and back and see nothing. The next time you water the garden, you see that the blinds on your parents' bedroom have closed too. You try to forget that they were ever open. Daylight is not so bad. You of 10 forget why you were afraid again. Sleep is fitful and elusive, driven off by empty paranoia. Your brother has already left for college, and you will be here alone until then. It's 3 by the time you hear something, a short something like choking or like laughing heard through popped ears. You lay still, rationalizing your cats or your neighbors or the house shift. In its foundations, this does not help because the door has just drifted open. The sliver of light it casts into your dark room a great dimness, like an approaching dawn. Whatever it is moves very fast because it must be on you, because you can see nothing but gray half-light, knocking the wind out of you so you are lost of breath for the moments it takes to press a limb again. Haste to your mouth, you attempt to bite and claw, but feel only the static pins and needles of limbs fallen asleep where you should have made contact. You are being dragged from your head out of your room. Crashing, the carpet burns your knees. There is nothing to think of but cold fear as you are dragged into the yawning darkness of your parents' room. Door open. The door will be locked. In the morning, your parents will feel terror at your absence. They will call the police, and they will not find the key to the locked door. A locksmith will be called in, and the crowd will watch, with breath bated for reasons they cannot properly say. The door will swing open, finally, and they will see nothing but an empty room. Story 4. Shadow of the Storm. Shadow of the Storm by Jungus. You always hear stories of boys and girls, or men and women for that matter, who will randomly wake up in a foreign land. Still groggy from sleep, their fears will get the best of them until the realization that they are mere feet or yards from their original nexus. Their beds, the occasional tale of the small child going missing, only to be found crying on the roof of their house or in the neighbor's backyard, are always a comical pleasantry. I, personally, had found sleepwalking a rather funny habit. When all is said and done, the idea that a person can move about completely, why free of the mind only to nearly forsake themselves to madness upon waking up, always seemed whimsical to me. It is, in essence, the perfect prank, your own body behind the back of its own opening mind seems to have a sense of humor, and the backbone of all good jests is the lack of consequence when the joke comes to fruition. I have yet to hear of a sleepwalker getting into a car and causing a fatal accident, or I have yet to hear of a sleepwalker turning on the faucet and drowning in their own bathtub. Ironically, however, there have been cases of both sleepwalkers driving cars and taking baths without any such tragedy. Of course, there are outlier cases in sleepwalking as well, but the number of creepy, funny tales of parasomniacs' shenanigans vastly outweigh at which you can find in the tragic, fatal tagline. So, I've decided to not let a few bad apples ruin the genre for me. My son, Jaime, started sleepwalking when he was 6 years old, and honestly, as a parent, it was terrifying for me at first. I woke up before dawn for work one morning and just found him sleeping on the hardwood floor of the upstairs hallway. I shook the little guy up, asked him if he preferred a harder mattress or something, and he just looked at me like, how the hell did I get here? When it started happening 3 to 4 times a week, that's when I started getting nervous, because while each instance was harmless and uneventful, a parent's mind always expects the worst when it comes to their child's safety. After the first few instances, I began asking the what-ifs. What if he self-defenestrates himself? What if he turns himself into the police for some crime I had no idea he committed? Yes, Jaime is only 6, and yes, parents' minds can stretch to even the most outlandish of places. Needless to say, I tell you, that kid was strong. When all went up in failure, I honestly just got over my paranoia. You see, the thing that was steamer, and relieving about Jaime's sleepwalking habit was that he always would end up in the same spot. The way our upstairs is set up, the landing stairs come right up to my bedroom, and his room is across the upstairs balcony from mine. On this balcony, the aforementioned hallway, there is a small light, one that's more akin to a large night light than an actual lamp, located between our 2 rooms a few times a week. Every single time I would wake up around for work and find him sleeping under the glow of this night light. Now I asked him if he wanted more light in his room, and he reminded me that he would sleep just fine and has no recollection of ever moving to the hallway. This went on for about a month and a half. After the first few weeks, it sort of just became a routine of mine. I would wake up for work, flip a coin, and if it was heads, Jaime would be under the night light again. Tails, and he was still in bed, I would always just tuck him back into bed and go off to work. However, this routine was interrupted one night in April. There was a small thunderstorm that night, and Jaime, being afraid of the storm, wanted to sleep in my bed. I tried sleeping in his room before, but never the inverse. Well, this technique was anti-therapeutic. I awoke that morning to find my son, unsurprisingly, not next to me in my bed. Casually, I got up and checked the hallway. To my terror, the night light shone down on nothing but the wood floor. I started panicking and screaming my son's name. No answer. Once again, the horrible what-ifs swarmed back into my mind. There was my son, splattered across the street outside my house. There was my son, face down in the local retention pond. There was my son, on the back of a newspaper or milk carton. And there was my son, sleeping on the back porch behind a sliding glass door. Recovering from my heart attack, I stepped out into the witching hour's daughter, school. Taking him up into my arms, I asked him what the hell he was doing out there. I got that familiar blank stare. Things returned to normal after that night. Back in his own bed, I was relieved to find him sleeping under the hallway nightlight a day later. So my son goes to one of those K through 5th grade schools, and call me paranoid, but I had him see the school psychologist. I notified her ahead of time that this was a minor sleepwalking issue, and that I just wanted any of her suggestions that she can draw from sitting down with Jaime. Jaime was pretty pissed at me for that one, but nothing a new Star Wars action figure couldn't fix. Anyway, she couldn't get anything out of him. My son had always been a good, cooperative kid in the few years of school he's had, and the psychologist told me that his testimony reflected that behavior. No underlying illnesses or behavioral issues were apparent, is what I think she said. After the good news, I did bring up to her that my son always ends up under the same night light, except for the one time he was under the porch light. She attributed this to a latent fear of the dark, that some kids can override their fear of the dark, but succumb to these fears subconsciously, i.e., when they're asleep. After a good laugh about how my son's fear-suppressing badass, I asked her if she had nothing else. She countered my question by asking if Jaime has ever manifested a fear of heights. Allegedly, the night of the storm, Jaime had a weird dream where it felt like he was falling. He had said that it was so vivid that he thought he had woken up, but that the fall was so brief it was over in the blink of an eye. The doctor asked him if he remembered anything else from that night, and with a shake of his head, then concluded that he must have still been dreaming. Time continued on once again, and the tedium of Jaime's midnight promenade slipped back out of my mind. By the end of April, Jaime's nap on the porch had become just another laughable memory. To this day, I love reminiscing about that night, where, after so much stress and panic concentrated over a few minutes, my boy was right there, waiting on the porch to be brought back into my arms. April showers bring May flowers, and the air is calmest just before the storm. The news rang on about a large-scale thunderstorm in my area. That night, April 30th, the weathermen were surprisingly accurate. For once, the storm was quite fierce. Flashes of lightning blinded me in the same duration yet opposite manner. Of the blink of my eye, their less graceful tag team partners followed not long behind with punches that seemed to nearly knock me off of my bed. In fact, they knocked Jaime out of his bed. I remember that boy standing in my doorway, his wide eyes barely gleaming under the hallway light. That boy who I tucked back into his own bed. Not this time, I wouldn't Washington. And you getting wet in the rain, the dark limbo before dawn came, a slightly darker limbo than I was used to. There it was, my son's door, ajar like the unhinged maw of a snake. There it was, the night light, having breathed its last, dead in the night. And there it was, the sheer panic that only a parent caught in the helpless headlights of chance can experience. Reminiscent of my past hell, I sprinted downstairs, sharply turning the corner of my floor. I nearly re-entered blackness when I almost tripped over my son's favorite teddy bear. I picked it up scan over its soft effects, and rub the matted spot on its left arm. Just above the bear shone our wall-mounted analog clock. Its face stared at me, frozen in fear, while its long black tail still reached for life. Inside the barren wall, the police found me that night, shouting and sprinting through my neighbors' blackened yards. They haven't found Jaime yet because of the storm. There were no eyewitnesses who saw my son leave the house. They've searched the entire area and have not a single lead. At this point, I try not to think of what happened to him. The flowers show wing up on my doorstep and porch the weeks after were little consolation. I just want to see my son again. I want to wake up and find him under the night light once more. I want to tuck him back into bed and kiss him good night. And then I don't want to see his face again until I pick him up from school that day. I hate seeing his face around dawn. His brown eyes are now acquiesced blackness. His light hair now strands of tinsel gray. Funny. It's probably how he looked when there wasn't any light. Story 5. Quiet. I never saw the ocean till I was 19. And if I ever see it again, it will be too goddamn soon. I was a child, coming out of the train, fresh from Amarillo, into San Diego and all her glory. The sight of it, all that water, and the blind crushing power of the surf filled me with dread. I'd seen water before, lakes plenty big, but that was nothing like this. I don't think I can describe what it was like that first time, and furthermore, I am not sure I care to. You can imagine the state I was in when a few weeks later they gave me a rifle and put me on a boat. When I stopped vomiting up everything that I ate, I decided that I might not kill myself after all. Not being able to see the land and that ceaseless chaotic rocking of the waves, I remember thinking that the war had to be a step up from this. Kids can be so fucking stupid. I had such a giddy sense of glee when I saw the island and its solid banks. They transferred us to a smaller boat in the middle of the night, just our undersized company with our rucksack, KS, and rifles, and not a word. We just took a ride right into it just because they asked us to. The lieutenants herded us into our platoons on the decks and briefed us. The island had been lost. That was exactly how he put it. Somehow in the grand plan for the Pacific, this one tiny speck of Earth, only recently discovered and unmapped, had gotten lost in the shuffle with singularly perfect clerica. Error was all it took. It was extremely unlikely. He stressed that the Japanese had gotten a hold of it, being so far east and south of their current borders. But a recent flyover reported what looked like an airfield in the central plateau. We hit the beach in the middle of the night. I'd heard talk of landings before, and I'm not ashamed to tell I was scared shitless. I don't know quite what I expected, but it wasn't we got. That thick, heavy silence behind the lapping of the waves and the wind in the trees. There was nothing, no birds, no insects, just deathly stillness. Another 100 yards deeper into the eerie tranquility of the jungle, we stopped in a small clearing for the officers to reconvene, and it was obvious even they were spooked. I wasn't a bright kid, but I knew enough to know that something was very wrong. It was like the whole island was dead. I remember I could only smell the sea, despite the red blossoms dangling from the trees. It wasn't an airfield on top of the plateau. I can't tell you what it was, because I've never seen anything like it, and I don't think anyone ever will. if I tell you it was like the Aztec pyramids, but turned upside down, so that it sank like giant steps into the earth, you'd get the basic idea of it. But that somehow fails to capture the profound unearthliness of the structure. There was no sign of individual pieces in the masonry. It appeared to have been carved out of a single immense block of black rock into a sharp and geometric shape. It was slick and perfectly smoothly obsidian, but it had no shine to it. It swallowed up even the moonlight, so that it was impossible to see how deep it went, or even focus your eyes on any one part of it. Like it was one giant blind spot, our platoon drew the honor of investigating the lower levels. So we descended the stairs as the rest of the company surrounded the plateau. We took the stairs slowly and carefully. After the first man to touch one of the right angle edges slit his hands down the bone. At odd intervals down the steps, there were several small stone rooms, simple, empty, hollow cubes of stone with one opening, facing the pit in the center. There was no door that we could see, and with the opening being 4 feet of the ground, you'd have to put your hands on that black rock. There's a sharp edge to climb, and into it we circle the descending floors, shining our lights into each of the small structures. They contained the same featureless black walls, and nothing else. No dust, no leaves, and other detritus from the jungle. The whole monument was immaculate, as if the place was just built. But that couldn't be right. The whole structure felt incalculably old, to me somehow, despite having no way to articulate the particular reasons. Down near the bottom, you could see that it simply sloped away into a darkness that swallowed the flashlights we tossed first a button and then a shell casing down into the pit, and waited in the unearthly silence. But no sounds returned. No one spoke. We simply turned away from the yawning abyss and continued our sweep of the bottom rung and the last of the small structures. The body in the back corner was almost invisible at first in the thick shadows, but the long spill of drying blood reflected the light of our flashlights, and it led right to him. He was coiled tight, arms around his thighs and his face tucked into his knees. You could see badly he was cut, his clothes opened in ragged, bloody tatters to reveal the pale skin and bone beneath it. He may have been dressed in a Japanese uniform, but it had been reduced to ribbons. I only had few seconds to look at him before we hear the first shots. It echoed like the buzzing of faraway insects in the still jungle, swallowed almost instantly by the blanket of quiet. By the time we reached the top, the rest of the company had vanished. There were shell casings on the ground, and the hot smell of gunpowder in the air, but they were gone. The trees were deathly quiet around. There was not a trace of the nearly 50 other men that had come ashore with us. I could taste bile rising in my throat as panic threatened to cripple me. I felt crushed between the yawning pit and razor edges on one side and the dead jungle and the pounding ocean on the other. The silence rang in my ears, and I struggled to still myself. They were just inside the jungle, waiting for us. They came out from between the trees with all sound of a moth simply sliding into our view. I can try to tell you what I saw, the same as I did to the army doc on the hospital ship when I first woke up, and again 6 other various officers over the following months, and you'll have the same reaction they did. That I was a dumb country rube suffering from heat stroke and exposure and trauma. That I was crazy. You know me. You know I'm not crazy, and I remember every second of that night with crystal clarity. The first one that caught my eye, was wearing the skin of a Jap soldier, all mottled with the belly distended from rot. The head drooped, useless and obscene on the shoulders, tongue swollen and eyes cloudy. I could see where it was coming apart at the ill-defined joints with ragged holes in the drying flesh. At the bottom of each of these raw pits was blackness, deeper than the stones of the buildings, a darkness that seemed to churn and froth like an angry cloud. The thing moved suddenly, the head snapping and rolling backwards as it dashed towards us. I had my rifle clasped tightly in my hands, but it simply didn't occur to me to fire. All I could do was gape silently at the macabre sight bearing down on us, and think absurdly of my mother's marionettes. A gun went off beside me, and I turned to see a dozen more of the horrors darting silently in on us. Among them were a few more rotting and swollen forms, but the majority wore the same uniforms as us and were pale, fresh, and soaked in blood. More bullets zipped through the air, and I saw the grisly things hit again and again, but they never slowed. I caught a glimpse of the first sergeant's vacant, glassy eyes as his head dangled limp from his shoulders. I saw the great ragged wound in his back and the shuddering darkness that inhabited his corpse when he leapt just past me without a sound, landing like a graceful predator onto the soldier beside me. The others around me began to drop in a silent dance of kinetic energy and blurred motion. I was on the track team in high school, and it could have got me to college. I didn't need an invitation. I just ran. I ran blind through jungle, caroming of tree trunks. I ran until I saw the ocean, and it struck a new ringing note of terror in me. I don't remember actually the city, NG to swim, but when I turned back to the tree line, I saw one of the white and bloody things emerge, running on all fours, the hands splayed wide and the back contorted and cracked in an impossible angle. To this day, the mere thought of the ocean still brings on a cold sweat. But that night I let it embrace me, let the tide drag me out to sea, if only to bring momentary relief from the impossible monolith and terrors on the island. The days I spent drifting offshore and blistering in the sun were a welcome release from the silent island. I never saw the war they sent me home as soon as I recovered. It was comforting in a way. When I thought no one believed me, it allowed me to believe that it never happened, that it was a product of my mind. But as I got older, I found that it is pointless to lie to anyone, especially yourself. I know what I saw. Someone else believed me, too. I've seen maps of where they tested the hydrogen bombs in the South P. ACIFIC. Story 6. Fire and ice, fire burns. It's a simple fact of life. Fire burns everything it touches in one way or another. This particular fire was being gulped down the throat of an overweight man in his late 30s. The man chugged the liquid like it was the antidote to every ailment that could ever affect him. In one way, it was working. He was slipping away. The man took another sip, a much smaller one, as he looked up from the little corner he had created for himself. Way beyond a simple buzz, his hand shook as he raised his glass in the air, ever so slightly asking for another. The bartender, a tall, lanky man, poured him another against his own better judgment. The middle-aged man downed it what seemed to be seconds, asking for Annette, her as quickly as he had finished it. A wave of agitation washed over the man as the bartender shook his head. "What the hell, man?" "Turnin' down a paying customer," slurred the man, lifting up his head high in a facade of confidence. The bartender paid him no attention, staring at the other non-existent patrons of his bar. "Come on, I be the only one here tellin' me you done. T notice me," the bartender sighed, reaching for the man's empty mug to refill it. The man's lips tilted upward at the thought of having that familiar fire run down his esophagus again. The bartender set down the now full-head mug in front of the disgruntled man. "What's got you so down, sir?" asked the tender. Man responded with only an angry grunt and another sloppy chug. "Sir, you've drank enough to create half the day's income. Something must be bothering you." The man still didn't answer, but he did look up at the much taller and much thinner man. The tender's yes gleamed an artificial red. "Contacts," thought the man through his drunken haze. Staring up at the tender gave the man some sense of comfort. He had no clue why, but it did. He felt as though the bartender deserved to know everything before he even knew it himself. Words that gave him away tumbled from his blubbery lips. "My wife is such a bitch," began the man. "Every day. Every da. Day. She's sittin' there waitin' for me. She must be there all day just to find things to yell at me for. What a bitch. Every damn day," he muttered, losing his battle with alcohol to speak coherently. "Guess I just wanted some payback," he mumbled. "Slapped the bitch so hard she spat up her nasty-ass blood." "That bitch," the bartender said nothing. His gaze lost its power, and the man realized what he had told. "But I regret doing it," added the bastard, trying to make himself out to be a better person than he was. The bartender remained silent, his face molding into a scowl. The man knew he had messed up. He shouldn't have said that, but, strangely, the tender didn't look angry or confused. He just looked disappointed. The man knew if he stuck around for much longer he'd let the rest of what he did spill, and he didn't want a prison sentence anything soon. The man stood up shakily, about to stumble out to his car to escape the bar and its tender. Despite his best efforts to keep his already cracked composure, he fell to the floor, too disoriented to walk or even crawl in a straight line. Still remaining mute, the bartender came out from behind the bar's counter, helping the man up by grabbing his upper arm. The man muttered an almost unbearable thanks before getting right back on his unsteady feet. Even though the man was standing and ready to leave, the bartender didn't release his hold. "What the hell, man?" half growled, half laughed the man. "I told you I didn't mean it. What I gonna do? Turn me in? You got no proof I killed the bitch." The bartender remained completely silent, even his breaths inaudible. He stared at the man, not saying a word or showing a single emotion. The man was already uncomfortable, knowing exactly how much trouble what he let slip would get him in, but having those artificial red eyes staring down at him made him feel actual fear. The thin man smirked. "Hey, man, whimper, T the mail. Let me go already." The bartender complied. Almost throwing the man by the arm, the man collected himself the best he could in his intoxicated state and turned his back to leave once more. "Wait, sir." The man turned around to see the bartender standing at his full, towering height. "Sir, I won't tell anyone if you're willing to shake my hand and pay me back the next time I see you." This stunned the man. He said nothing as the bar's caretaker came towards him at an almost threatening pace. "I promise I won't tell. I'm not looking for money, just for you to shake my hand." The thin man stuck out his hand. The man made no movement. He swallowed, his mind too foggy to think through what the tender was offering him. He got the gist of it, knowing that something horrible would happen if he didn't compose himself and shake that twig of a man's hand. So he did. He took the man's hand in an awkward fumble that could only be described as a hand shake under its loosest meaning. The bartender smiled at the man but said nothing. The tender went behind the bar like their entire confrontation hadn't even happened. The man, knowing it was his time to leave, ambled out, getting in his car and driving away without another word. The extra set of eyes from the alcohol made it hard to drive, but not exceedingly so. He managed to make his way home, quite a feat. When he opened the door to his home, he noticed something was off about the smell. He had left the place reeking of bleach, cleaning products, and blood. Why the hell did it smell like his event didn't happen? The man walked around the house, looking for any sign of life. A quiet humming drifted from the kitchen, buzzing past the man's ears. His wife stood there, washing the dishes like nothing had happened. He paled. The only person who knew, or even had a clue about what he did, was that bartender. There was no possible way she could be alive. He'd beaten the bitch to death. He was positive he did. "Oh, hon, where have you been?" The man ran. He bolted as fast as he could back to his car. He threw open the doors and left his home faster than he had ever before. He knew where he needed to go. He had to go to that stupid bar by the stupid name of Ninth Circle to see that stupid bartender. He had to find what the actual hell was going on. He became so focused on his task that everything else faded away from him, including the basic road safety laws. The man crashed full speed into an oncoming vehicle. Equals. "Ooh," groaned the man. Waking up, he'd never felt more clear-headed or well-rested in his life. He ran his fingers through his hair as he realized where he was, or rather, where he wasn't. This was most certainly not the realm of the living. He was in a room made entirely of glass, with the ice beneath starting to cool the room, dropping to impossible temperatures. The man made no movements. He simply sat in the same spot where he woke, too afraid to move in any direction. It was too cold to move. Smoke began to fill the room. The black mist hovered at the ceiling's level. In an instant, it began morphing and congealing to reveal a very thin, very familiar man. It was the bartender. What the hell am I doing here? What's happening? How is this happening? I need answers, damn it, screeched the overweight man, smashing his fists against the bottom of the glass like a child. "What the fuck? Give me an answer." The bartender said nothing as he came to stand right in front of the man, leaving less than a foot between them. "You see, sir," smirked the tender, "you promised to pay me back on the condition that I tell no one what you did to the poor woman you call your wife." "And that I did," he cut, glaring down at the man as a form of scolding. "But you see, as a parting gift for giving me such an amazing deal, I gave you back something you claim to regret losing." The bartender smiled down a Cheshire grin. "Sadly, you don't see pleased by my gift to you, and for that I am sorry." The thin man bowed. The man on the floor stayed still and silent, Why are you doing this? Breathed the man, beginning to understand what was happening. Sir, you made a contract with me that you did, explained T. He taller man. When you shook my hand, you made a deal. I would stay silent at the price of your soul. And now that you've gone and gotten yourself killed, oh, come one, sir, Don. T cry now. We haven't even started yet. Despite the demon's protests, the man's tears continued to fall. What you did to that woman was inexcusable. That's why you're down here in the ninth circle, sir. I am terribly sorry for your tragic death, but I'm much less sorry to do this. The glass fell away. Ice, it came at the man from all angles before he even hit the floor. It grabbed at his limbs as he thrashed them around to escape. It burrowed into his very being as it pierced his chest and invaded its cavity. The man howled in pain, his blood dripping down the pikes that pulled him into the ice. That's when he noticed it. Thousands, maybe millions of people frozen beneath the ice. The man screamed as the ice finally swallowed him whole. In his final feeling, he felt warm, almost searingly so. And as a final thought, the man realized something. Fire isn't the only thing that burns. Story 7. You should always wait until the next day. It was Tuesday night, tea of the second study week. I looked at the black-rimmed clock hanging on the wall, stating that it was 2:45 a.m., almost invisible, illuminated only by the table lamps of mine and my roommate. I turned my head slightly towards the back to see that he was still on his study desk facing the opposite wall. Our midterm examination was starting next week, so it was normal to find students staying up for hours studying so we could score our papers. Our desks were positioned to the sides of the room so we would each be facing the cream-painted wall. There was a large window in between the desks with glasses stacked up, the one that you would have to pull or push down a handle to open. It was covered by an old brown curtain that seemed like it had not been washed for ages. The single beds were arranged next to the study desk respectively, followed by a moderate size and decent-looking cabinet to place all our clothes and other personal stuffs. I twisted my waist from right to left alternately and stretched up both of my hands as much as I could to relax my muscles and reduce the stiffness from sitting too long on the chair. Looking at my notes and books, I knew I still have a lot to cover, yet my half-closed eyes were betraying me. Releasing a deep sigh, I slowly rose up and began my lazy steps towards the door. As expected of a dorm, the bathroom was located at the far end of the building, and I had to pass by several other rooms to get there. Halfway through walking in the dimly lit corridor, being more alert now, I noticed that it was unusually quiet. There would be some noises from a room playing some soft music to accompany the solemnness throughout the night, or the snoring of students, which were pretty common and in fact audible behind these doors, but there were none at all. In fact, the only sounds I could hear were my own breaths and careful footsteps as to not disturb the other residents. That's odd, I thought to myself. Oh well, I guess you could also have a quiet night like this, as I tried to reassure myself. However, I could not shake the feeling of uneasiness that lingered in me. I quickened my steps to the bathroom, and when I reached it I breathed a sigh of relief. It was unnervingly cold in the toilet. I looked around under the dim light of the white fluorescent lamp cautiously to find nothing out of the ordinary. However, I could not shake off the anxiety that something was just not right. Quickly, I went straight to the sink and turned on the faucet. Slightly bending over, I gently splashed the cold water to my face to freshen up when suddenly I heard a creak from one of the doors of the cubicles behind. That definitely startled me, and I could feel every hair on my body rose up. It was probably just the wind. After washing up my face, I looked at the mirror, and until now I really wished I had not. Why didn't I get the hell out straight away? After washing my face, the cues were there, and being the coward I knew that the mirror is something that I believe I have to avoid if I feel strangely wrong about a situation. The reflection showed something that made my heart stopped beating for a second. I froze in fear and dread that was starting to escalate fast. The door to the cubicle was slightly open because there was a hand that had slowly pulled the door inwards. The fingers looked like the end branches of a rotten tree infested with parasites, weakly colored with pale gray and wrinkled. The nails were especially long, sharp, and crooked. At the tip, I wanted to run, but of course my legs just would not move. It never moved in this kind of situation. My stare was frozen solid towards that unknown creature. The door slowly opened, and it stopped before reaching halfway. I could feel myself trying to breathe as softly as possible, as if with every sound that I made I would startle the unknown entity hiding behind the door. Regardless, fate has decided upon me that this would be my first encounter with it. What showed up first was the side of its hair as it slowly tried to peek at me, the messy long black hair, like it had not been washed for ages. Then I could see the whitish-gray wrinkled skin and the corner of its mouth, which was forming a smile. The lips were thin and blood-red, and the teeth were yellow and crooked. The smile was abnormally so wide it almost reached the left ear. My eyes moved slowly towards one of the eye, which was slowly revealing itself, a bulging white eye and a black pupil in the middle. The nose area was flat, except for two small holes in the middle. The movement was slow and steady, as if it was trying to mock me. Almost all of its face was shown when it suddenly stopped. Then it blinked and shrieked out of nowhere. I could feel my energy returning rapidly, and I sprinted from the bathroom as fast as I could towards my room without looking back even once. I turned the handle of my door, and once I was inside, I quickly locked the door. I swore I felt like shedding my manly tears, if not because of my roommate was there in the S.A.M.E. room. I tried to regain my composure as I sloped down and sit on the carpeted floor. I looked at my roommate, who was still concentrating on his notes. Staring at my trembling hands, I hold both of my hands together. "Danny, you won't believe what I saw just now. I thought I was going to die. There was something in the bathroom. I just don't know how to describe it. It was horror." A giggle stopped me from finishing my sentence. At that very second, I felt like I had made a mistake. I slowly raised my head, looking up towards my roommate, and he slowly turned his face towards me, revealing a face that I knew so well, and said with a teasing voice, "Oh, does it look like this?" It was the same face I saw in the bathroom. I was so shocked and scared to make any movement, and as I blinked, with a movement so quick the horrendous face was now 5 centimeters away from my own pale face. Then everything turned black, and I could not remember anything else. I didn't know how many hours, deep past when I heard my name being called faintly. Jet, Jet, wake up. I slowly opened my eyes, and it was all blurry at first. The sun ray blinded me for a while, and I covered the light with my hand. Then I could see Danny's worried face up close as he tried to wake me up. Remembering the night before, I jerked away from him as a reflex. He saw my pale and frightened face as I tried to stay away from him and looked at me perplexedly. Hey, what's wrong? It's me, Danny. Why are you lying on the floor? He asked worriedly. Is that really you? Are you really Danny? What, have you forgotten your own roommate's face? What the heck happened? He asked again. I breathed a sigh of relief. We walked to my bed, sat down, and I told the whole story to H.M. As I finished my story, it was his turn to look as pale as a ghost. My gut sort of told me what he was going to say next, and I truly dreaded the words that came out of his mouth afterwards. I just got back from my home this afternoon. When I opened the door, I saw you lying there on the floor. I was not here yesterday. Whoever you were studying with the whole night, was definitely not me, he explained with a trembling voice. Then he remained silent for a while before continuing with his words. He seemed reluctant to say it, but he started telling me a story of a leaner lady that died in the bathroom 7 years ago. He did not know the details, but apparently the cleaner lady was ugly, and some naughty students decided to harass her. They sneaked in while she was mopping the floor and scared her hopeless. She was definitely surprised, but unfortunately she slipped due to the wet floor, fell down, hit her head, and died from an internal bleeding of the brain. What the ... How come I've never heard of this story? This is ridiculous, but why did she appear in the room? That didn't make any sense. She should have just stayed in the bathroom. I cried desperately. Well, about that, I know this is a bit much for you to swallow, but please bear with me. He started to tell me about another myth that was told by his grandma when he was little. She told him that if ever he was to encounter an evil entity and managed to get away from it, try to stay silent about it until the next morning. Do not speak up about it on the same day to anyone at all. Wait until the next morning. If you speak about it, you would be summoning and acknowledging its existence, and it would appear again. What happens to you afterwards depends solely on the creature's mercy. We both looked at each other's eyes, totally freaked out about the whole thing. I learned my lesson now, and for you readers, if you ever see something that looks like it just comes out from your worst nightmare, run if you could, hide if you could, close your eyes and try to faint if you could. But do not ever, I repeat, do not ever speak of it to someone else on the same day, or it might just be the last day of your life